Hey everybody, this is Barry Katz, and you're watching the Break It Down show. I thought I'd do that slowly.
I love it. I love a good slow intro and everything else. And I'm gonna have to slide over so I can actually see your face. The cameras are in here. We're in at Dash, by the way, in Hollywood. There we are, the two of us. You can see that we're actually here together. I love that we get to have this conversation. You and I share a common connection with Jay Moore. And I guess the first thing I want to start with is when Jay and I were talking about this. If you're successful, one of the things that's going to ultimately happen is every gigantic agency in the world is going to try to take your successful comedian and make them theirs. They're always going to be whispering in their ears. How does that impact how you make decisions about the business?
I remember somebody told me a long time ago, this friend of mine, Judy Fisher, one of the first persons to ever say this to me. What you think of me is none of my business. And I always loved that. And now many people would say, Barry, that's not true in show business. What people think of you is really important, and you got to change the listening. You got to figure out how to make it so everybody's on the same page, and the way they're talking aligns with your strategy and what you're doing. I always found with the bigger agencies, it's very hard for one person to go against an army of people, except if you're a sniper.
Yeah.
Then you can take down a whole army. And so you got to figure out how to be a combination of somebody who makes the army feel like they've won and they've gotten you where they want you, while simultaneously in the back of your mind strategizing how what they're doing is doing everything you wanted them to do in the first place. And artists always come to me and they say, how do you get representation? And I always say, stop worrying about representation. They will find you and chase you like your ass is on fire. It's like if you think about music and comedy, there's so many things that are bizarre about music and comedy. First thing, you go to see the Rolling Stones. What do you want to see? You want to see Sympathy for the Devil. You want to see Satisfaction. You want to see all the greatest songs that mean something in your life. And they play them for you 50 years later. You want to see Dave Chappelle do the crack baby routine? You're never going to see it again. You could pay him $1 million to do a show with the crack baby routine in it, and he turned down the $1 million. So that's one thing. Secondly, about comedians and musicians. Musicians never talk to other musicians. They have no camaraderie. They have no inspirational thing that they do. Chris Rock is standing up in a hallway at the Improv, and a young comedian who's done it twice can walk up to him and say, hey, Chris, I got this opening thing. What do you think of it? And he'll tell you. And so when it comes to representation, if you're a musician anywhere in the world, I'm sorry to say, and it's horrible to think this way, but there could be 2,000 other people getting standing ovations all over the country for their music, and it's going to be hard to break through. Really hard to break through. Your content really has to help you break through. In comedy, if you're doing the right thing, you're doing a 5-minute set that's equivalent to Jim Jeffries' gun control bit in a bathroom in Guam, people will find you, and these agents and managers will chase you until they figure out a way to sign you. And that's the way it works. And so when you're a manager already on the team and you bring on other representatives, you're bringing on to help make the artist feel safe and help the artists achieve everything they want to achieve. And if it means that there's sometimes where there's disagreements or things that happen, so be it. I remember I represented Bert Kreischer for about 7 years. And we went in to pitch sort of a story of his life, kind of like he was the #1 party animal at Florida State. They did an article about him on Rolling Stone. He had the Machine story, which he's making the movie now. We go pitch it at the studio that shall remain nameless, and we're just about to go in and pitch. And no, we went in and pitched, and then we saw a poster for Van Wilder. It was the same kind of movie we were pitching. And I'm not going to go into all the details because I don't want to bore your audience, but 3 days later, we're on a call with his lawyers, his agents, his publicists, his whole team, and me, talking about how we were going to sue the company and stop them from doing that movie. And I didn't talk the whole meeting. And it was like an hour later, and Bert's like, Barry, this is very unusual for you. You haven't said anything. We've agreed to sue the company. What do you have to say? I said, I know this isn't going to be popular, but I respectfully disagree. Even if they did something horribly wrong, you have two choices as an entertainer. Do you want to be somebody who's known as doing unbelievable content that inspires the world and changes people's lives? Or do you want to be known as the guy who sues people? Yeah. And he decided not to sue. And I think it was a very good decision.
You run into this a lot. My buddy Brad and I were talking on the way over here about how in the music industry, especially in the music industry, there is a cost to get in, and that's access to the industry. And so there are a lot of unfavorable contracts early on. And then as long as you don't run out of ideas, you get to have better terms as you go along. I don't know if that's true in comedy, but there is something to be said about if you're truly great, if you're a professional, you don't want for great ideas. You have them at a rate that far exceeds a ham and egger. Nothing wrong with being a ham and egger, but you're just not worried about brilliance because you are brilliant.
It's hard to be a ham and egger when you're Jewish. I'm a matzah breyer. I'm a lox and bagel kind of egger. No, I think it's what you're saying is very profound. At the end of the day, I always say this, and I've said it from when I first met Jay, and he always makes fun of me in my voice. But if you're undeniable, you can't be denied. And so it's always been a mantra of mine. So it's like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's like this podcast, this podcast isn't going to be at this stage of the game. It's not the highest rated podcast out of 767,000 podcasts.
Right.
And it's not the lowest.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere in between to where, and you have to decide for you if your goals were and what it was you wanted, because you set these goals, and then if they exceed those goals, then you set new goals. So many things happen to artists that you can't even quantify of why they happen. I could tell you stories that are just incredible. Like, I mean, look, Jay Moore, you mentioned Jay. I mean, I was representing him for 25 years. I represented him when he was a teenager and he was auditioning for Saturday Night Live. And he gets to the place where the audition is Stand Up in New York, and he's wearing like shorts, running shoes, and a t-shirt, and he's all sweaty. I'm like, what's going on here? So yeah, I just ran down here. I just getting them off some nervous energy. And I'm thinking to myself, Lorne Michaels is in the crowd, and my client is auditioning with t-shirt and gym shorts on, like from Verona High School or something like that.
Yeah. And
I'm thinking to myself, in my mind, it's like I had this discussion with somebody who worked with me who always wears sweatpants. I said, when you see somebody with sweatpants, what does that say about their work ethic and their image of themselves and what it is? It says they're lazy or they're not really, they don't really care.
Right.
And I wanted to say something to him, but there's an old expression that we've used together that we love and that we talk about it a lot. And it's one of my favorites. Don't spook the thoroughbred.
Yeah.
And so you don't go up to him before his SNL audition and say, hey, what's the story here? What are you doing? You support the guy.
Yeah.
And my feeling was I was thinking of the angle to take, and he might not even remember this, but my angle to take was, it's great that you're here like this. This lets the most powerful guy in the world in television know that, you really are ambivalent about this. You could care one way or the other if you get it. You're still going to be okay. That's what your outfit says. That's what it says to me, that you're not putting too much into this audition to show like, my God, I've got to dress up in a 3-piece suit and I got to nail this. It's like, hey, I'm going to go, I'm going to do my best. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, you don't. I'm going to do okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's always things that happen that way. And he went on, he got the show, and pretty incredible. And another thing, which throughout your podcast, because I do listen, is that, and again, this has been written on walls and caves from thousands and thousands of years ago, but it's truly unbelievable what fate and failure bring to your life personally and professionally. It's insane how unbelievable things go for you when you embrace getting the shit kicked out of you. It's truly incredible. I'm sure your mother and mine would say, well, Barry, it's always darkest before the dawn, whatever. But that always leads to something special.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously somebody who's listening would say, oh, really, Barry? My uncle was hit by a jet engine that fell from the sky and he died. How is his life better?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many examples, but what I'm saying is, if you happen to have the ability to live after you get the shit kicked out of you, things are going to go better. One of my assistants came here from Louisiana, locked up this apartment. Everything's all set, all excited. 3 days before he scheduled a move, they say, listen, we decided to give it to somebody else who gave us more money. And he is like despondent.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, I said, listen, I'm going to say something to you that I say to a lot of people. So I'm sorry if it's not original. You're going to buy that person a fruit basket, thanking them that they did that, because the next apartment you find is going to be so much better, so much cheaper. Right. And it's going to open up a world where there's neighbors that you're going to know that you didn't know before. There's a neighborhood you didn't know. And sure enough, he got this beautiful apartment overlooking the Hollywood sign and the Magic Castle right next to it. And it's less money.
Yeah.
And that's the way things work. How many times have you talked to people on your podcast and, well, where did you meet your wife? Oh, well, I was in line at the airport and getting deported, and she was there, and I asked her for a number and she gave it to me, and it was the wrong number. It was her aunt's number, but she forgot to tell her aunt not to say listen, you got the wrong number. And then he called, I was there, and we've been together 36 years.
Yeah.
Fate is this weird thing, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, good and bad. It's incredible. I use probably the word life-changing too much, but that's the way it is. Like, you called me, I'm here. I'm doing this show. I'm so honored to be here and to do this with you. You've had a long, incredible history. I mean, you've done close to 1,000 podcasts. It's one of the greatest accomplishments that anybody could ever imagine. And you've talked to hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And so when you ask me to do this, I know that I want to be great for you, and I want to be great for your audience, and I want to give your audience something that maybe they'll take with them and unpack another time that will help them, get to the next level of their journey, whatever it is, just like I have.
Going back a few minutes, you were talking about Jay and, the idea that where you want to get to, you want to get to Saturday Night Live, you want to, play the improv or whatever it's going to be. Sometimes you get there and that's not your thing, but you don't know what else to pick. There are so many jobs out there that as a young person, you can't even imagine, but it's the job for you. There is a person right now who manages satellite constellations for companies. Who knew that job existed? There is a lawyer for space. There was a broker for space on space rockets going to space. All these things that you can't imagine. And the same thing is true in entertainment. I mean, how many people come to this town wanting to be on the mic in front of the camera, whatever it is, and it turns out, their thing is songwriting or something else, but they had to get here to get into the pool to figure out how they swim. Turns out they don't do butterfly at all. They do this crazy upside down backstroke.
An incredible story for me is I have this internship program. And if anybody ever wants to get into the entertainment business, feel free to go to my website, barrykatz.com. And I do this weird thing where I don't do normal applications. You submit a video application and it has questions and you can make it as funny as you want, however you want to do it. So there was a woman named Ashley Tsai who was at Carnegie Mellon University, and she wanted to study business and the business of entertainment and different sides of entertainment. And I put her on doing the breakdowns, which is the acting breakdowns, and soliciting auditions for clients. She's like, "Why are you giving me this? This isn't what I want to do. This isn't even any." I said, "Because I don't want you to do what you want to do. I want you to work on things. You already know you can do that. I want you to work on things." One of your guests in the past, Jordan Harbinger, one of the greatest things that he says, and I love it, the way he says it, skill stacking. He talks about how it's important to learn as many things. And anybody worth anything in the entertainment business is going to tell you when you're on a set, you learn the job of the craft service guy who serves the crackers and cheese and the M&Ms. And you learn the job of the director, the producer. You learn every job as best you can. And I don't care if you're a producer on the movie. I just produced a movie with Michael Madsen and Jay Moore and Rob Morrow and Zach Gordon from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And I go get people coffee.
Yeah.
I'm producing the movie with other people. I'm not waiting for an intern to get the coffee. I'm getting them the coffee. I don't care. I have no ego. So this girl comes and works for me, and she's doing the breakdowns. And a few months in, she says to me, "Barry, can I meet with you?" I met with her. She said, I think I can do this. I said, "Well, you are doing it. You're doing a great job." No, I think I can act. I said, "Okay, well, get some headshots done, put a resume together, and start sending yourself out on Backstage," which is for those of you who don't know, around the country or the world, it's a magazine here and other places that has acting auditions, but they're not like union acting auditions. They're more student films or low budget commercials or films that don't have a lot of money. She submits herself. She starts booking things, books one thing, two things. By the time her 3 months is done, she's booked 10 jobs. She's booked more jobs than my clients have booked.
Right.
So the semester ends and she says, "Barry, they're telling me I have to take another internship, but I'm fighting it. I want to stay with you." I said, well, yeah, I don't think you have to stay with me. You're doing really well. No, I want to stay, and I want to know if I can, while I'm working with you, look at the breakdowns, and if I reach out on my own to these people, are you okay with it? I said, yeah, as long as it isn't inflicting on the rules of whatever it is that we're working on. The next thing she books is a $10,000 job in South Korea. Now she just called me this week and said she booked the lead in a feature film.
What?
This is somebody who had no interest in anything having to do with on-camera work. So that's what's amazing about the world. It's you know, she got the internship. She could have taken another internship. I have another person working with me who worked with the Kardashians. And she took an internship with this program with me. And there was a job that opened at a major agency in the comedy touring department. And I love the work she does. Again, it's something we talked in the beginning of this podcast. If you do the work and you do great work, you're noticed. You can't, I could tell your audience over and over again, as my mom would say, till I'm blue in the face. You never have to worry about anything if you're doing extraordinary work. It's impossible to fail. I don't care if you're a migrant worker in the tobacco fields or if you're running Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, people tell you, you find out real quickly when you're not doing a good job and when you are. And if you're working for, I'll say, the person and not working for yourself, then you're beholden to their rules. And there's 1,000 other motherfuckers who are waiting in line to take that job if you don't do things that are extraordinary. But if you do things that are extraordinary, you're going to move up. My first guest on my podcast 10 years ago was the president of Viacom and Comedy Central and did Fox. And I said to him, my God, you're unbelievable. You've gotten all these jobs. It's incredible. Yeah, Barry, I got fired from all those jobs. I said, yeah, but everybody gets fired from those jobs.
Yeah.
Have you noticed? He said, of course I noticed, Barry. Every time I take one of those jobs, I say the same thing to myself. I'm renting the chair.
Yeah.
I'm renting the chair. And so, again, it all comes full circle. And I think a lot of what you talk about to your guests in different ways, not just throughout their journey or how it is, but every guest that you have, for the most part, their journey has taken them on a climb. It's an elevation. But during the climb, there's times when you don't always go up. You have to go down sometimes to get back up because you can't navigate a certain way. But you still, your goal is to keep rising. And you can't keep rising if you don't do the work, if you don't put it together. Mike Krzyzewski would say, you have to have a motor. And the motor has to be running from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to bed, or else there's going to be other motors that are going to pass you.
Yeah. Yeah. When we first started the show, we were able to book Sly Stone, you know, what an icon, right? And what we didn't want to do was tell the story of homelessness and drugs. And so instead and there's only so much of him left. You know, he's an older man. He's abused a lot of drugs. And one of the things he said, though, in his moments of brilliance, there was this wisdom that poured out of him nonstop. He said, if my music isn't good enough, I don't deserve to eat. And we realized the stakes, sliding it all in, that's adorable. Like, this is a guy who's like, I won't eat until I make great music. You know, that's how he's driven by a different level, a different gear. And a lot of us, I think, underestimate what it takes to produce a movie. You don't just walk into Hollywood and say, I'm going to produce a movie and then be handed a budget. Like that's just not how it works, right? So you have to develop these gears, you have to develop these skills that allow you to do it. And you're right, like in gosh, over 1,500 episodes now, not to correct you, but I'm stoked about this. Over 1,500 episodes of this show. I have talked to some amazing people, and all of them have had their moments of reinvention. You know, how many people in this town we're getting the phone call, and all of a sudden the phone call stops and they wonder, oh no, am I good enough? But then they persevere, they find it, they get through whatever trial they're going through, and then they're more desirable than ever in the industry because they have gone through that fallow time, and then whatever it needs to grow grows in them. I've heard that story, whether it's here in this town or it's my spy friends. I've been kicked off more camps as a spy for us on our team, right? Like than anybody. I mean, I got fired, kicked out of theater because I bring a lot of bad news. That's what spies do. They have like, hey, here's what sucks that's out there you need to know about, right? And that makes you unpopular with people. So you have to get used to dealing with the very people you're trying to help as a client so that they don't despise you because, oh, here comes bad news Pete, right? So all of these things you have to gear up for. But again, you don't know that you need these cogs in your box and then how to put them together. And some of it just takes time before, like people always talking about, I'm always grinding. At some point, you do have to get the polishing. You can't just chop all the time.
We have a lot in common.
Oh, nice.
Because being a spy is a lot like being a manager.
Yeah.
Because you're finding out all the information. And some of the information isn't pretty.
Yeah.
I remember there was a young man who worked with me long ago, and he always used to quote this sentence from Batman. Decent people shouldn't live here. And there's a lot of fucked up things about the business. There's even things in the people that are listening in your business that you don't even think about. Like, let's say you're going into a sales meeting and you're trying to sell a client or a team of people on something because it's all about the sale. I'm sad to report to everybody listening that life is just one big fucking sale. That's all it is. We're constantly selling things about ourselves or our businesses. So you go into the sales meeting, there's 4 people there waiting to hear your presentation. You're walking in, nobody gives you the information. You have no idea if Sally's mom just had a stroke, if Ben just got engaged, if Josephine's sister just had a baby, or if Sam's father passed away, or if one of them finds out they're not going to be retained after their contract is up. But you have to go in there and you have to make the room your own. And I'll give you an example of how in comedy, I used to represent the great Louie Anderson. One of my favorite things about Louie is when I love watching people's first national television appearances. There's something really wonderful about it. And I'm sorry for the audience. Apparently, there's a construction site before, in back of me, and the only thing missing is women walking by and them whistling. I don't know what's happening, but it's okay. So I love studying comedians and what they do. So I'm going to take a little detour with Louie for a second. So when Louie got the Tonight Show, he's this baby-faced kid. He's wearing the suit. He's like 350 pounds. And his job before he got to Tonight Show was to audition to sell the guy who books the Tonight Show to say, I feel safe enough to put you in front of Johnny and 50 million people at the time. To show you how big that show was back then, 40 years ago, him and Roseanne did the show within 6 months. 6 months later, they were selling out 5,000 seaters.
Yeah.
Louie's first 3 jokes, just so your audience knows what I love so much about Louie. They're applauding. He comes out there. He's, listen, I don't have much time. I'm in between meals. So in 5 seconds, Louie now pitches to the audience a sale of how I want you to feel about me. Essentially, by telling that joke, he's saying, listen, everybody in the audience and at home.
Yeah.
I know you're watching saying, does that guy know how fat he is? And I'm telling you within 5 seconds, I know, and it's okay to think those thoughts, and we're going to laugh together. But he's not totally sure at that moment that that's enough for the sale.
Mm-hmm.
So his next joke. Before I came here, I went to McDonald's. They had to change the sign. Remember the signs, 1 billion sold?
Yeah, it was fascinating.
So right away, so now he's saying again, I've already sold you on the fact that I'm fat.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to make fun of the way I'm fat and be self-deprecating so you can laugh and feel safe with me and tell your friends about me.
Yeah.
But then he goes one step further to make sure he solidifies the sale in 3s. But I'm trying to get healthy, trying to get in that LA lifestyle. Didn't work out too well. I went down to the beach. People kept pushing me back in the water. So again, they're applauding wildly. He's got them in the palm of his hand. He's made the sale. He's made the sale to the audience. He's made the sale to the viewers.
Yeah.
And he's made the sale to Johnny Carson. And he becomes a sensation. And so that's what it all is about. It's just about figuring out how to do that in a way in your business, in your life. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You go out on a first date. There's a block of wood between you and the person you're on the first date with. I don't care what your sexual orientation is. You're sitting down there, and normally you have a vision and an agenda of how you want to be presented.
Yeah.
You're selling yourself on them to make them feel safe. So at some point in time, think about this. This is where I'm probably going to get canceled. But think about this. Think about, I'll just take what I know, the basic normal, I'm not even going to say normal. That's horrible. Scratch that from the record. The basic, what some people in the world would say traditional heterosexual relationship, which that's all I really know about in my world with me. So if me or other people who are in that world are talking to a woman and they're interested in them and they like them, they have to make them feel safe enough to go on a second date with them and a third date with them. And eventually, presumably, there's going to come a time between the end of the first date and whatever, the 10th date or whatever it is, somewhere for everybody it's different, where the dress falls to the floor. And this woman feels comfortable enough with that man to be like, okay, I'm here and let's enjoy intimate moments together. I know the world has changed, and I know that there's a lot of people who share a lot of philosophies about intimacy, and there's some people who have no problem with not even knowing the person or caring, and it's not about that. That's why I said in the traditional sense that I'm used to. In that world, it's what it is. It's like that woman has to feel safe in order to not only go on a second date, be intimate, get engaged, get married, have children with that person. And so it's anything. Look, you sat down with Sly Stone.
Yeah.
When you sit down with somebody, you want to be the best representation of yourself. And you want Sly Stone to say, holy shit, I don't do a lot of interviews, but man, that Pete A, that guy was fucking amazing. I am executive producing this show here at the studio with Bill Bellamy called Top Billin'. And we had Magic Johnson on last week. And something happened in that interview that might not necessarily have been something that was important to the audience as much as it was important to Bill and Magic. He stops in the middle of the interview. He's in the middle of a question. He just stops. He's like, what camera am I on? And he points to the camera. He says, I just want to say something, interrupt. I'm sorry, Bill. I've been doing interviews for over 40 years. And he talks to his assistant, how many requests do I have for interviews right now? And she yells out, over 100, Magic. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. I had an instinct to be here. And I'm here, and my instinct was correct. Because, Bill, you are the first interviewer that has ever fully gotten who I am. Wow. And I am so grateful for that. And he said, you know me, Bill. I'm not a bullshitter. I'm not going to bullshit.
Yeah.
And it was like, literally, I felt like Bill could have cried. The producers could have cried. Magic could have cried, because it was that moment where you realized, okay, we did what his mantra is. And for those of you who don't know, Magic Johnson's mantra is over deliver. So Bill, the show, did that. That's what you do. And your audience who's out there, whatever you do, the only way, in my humble opinion, the only way you're going to ensure and guarantee your success personally and professionally is if you do things to reverse the roles and pretend you're trying to impress yourself. So like this podcast here, Pete, pretend there's 100 yous.
Yeah.
There's 100 podcasts, and 100 of them are you. They're clones of you. How are you going to beat 99 of you?
Yeah.
And if you can figure out how to do that and get more attention than the people who are exactly like you as you, then you're more likely to do that in your personal life, when you're meeting people, in your professional life, as an artist, a comedian. David Copperfield has been the #1 magician for 35 years. He owns 11 islands. I'm very friendly with David. He works 680 shows a year. Jeez. He's 65 years old. I said to him, why do you do that? He said, listen, I want to be on top. I want to stay on top. I don't want anybody to pass me. I got to work harder than everybody else. And if I don't work harder than everybody else and work smarter than everybody else, then they're going to work harder and smarter, and they're going to pass me. And when I sit across from you, not to embarrass you, but you have this way about you that's, permission to speak freely?
Please, please.
I don't know much about you, but you have this energy about you where literally the light and the darkness are two trains going together, and they're smashing together, but the light is winning.
Yeah.
So you're like this guy that has this energy, like there's something going on, like there's like a darkness, but the light is winning.
Yeah.
And so when you do this podcast and when you interview me, I feel this person who really genuinely is doing everything in their power to make me feel safe and to put me in a position to win and to put me in a position to have a podcast that's as memorable as any other one that he's had. That's your thing that you do. That's your sale. That's what you've sold on me, but you sold it to me without saying.
Yeah.
You haven't said anything about it, but it's your energy and how you engage and how you focus. And it's just, and the questions you ask. And it's really, really wonderful. And I've done too many interviews to count. And it's something that I can understand why you've done 1,500 of these things.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, other people are starting podcasts. I'm sorry to digress, but I think it's important for this, and then I'll shut up. It's like, how many times you heard somebody say, "Oh, you're doing a podcast?" Yeah, I started it. I was doing it every Monday. Then I stopped, and then I whatever. And it's like, not Pete.
Yeah.
Pete shows up.
I show up.
Pete shows up, and when he's not feeling like he wants to do interview, I can guarantee you he probably was driving over here today saying to himself in traffic, "Oh, this motherfucker, I can't believe I got to go to Hollywood to fucking interview this guy. Nobody knows who the fuck this guy is. Why am I here? What's happening? Okay, don't buy the handgun. There's a 7-day waiting period. You're not going to be able to kill yourself here. So let's just get through this interview and whatever." But instead, you make me feel like you're actually, feeling good. So
I do feel good. And there is some darkness in me because I've seen a lot of horrible things. Right. But it's life. And one of the things people talk about is like, "Oh man, this is COVID is terrifying." And I'm like, I've been in a head-on accident with a tank. So scary is different for me now. Right. And so I do think I can't control when that energy is out, because that's part of who I am. Right. I've been shot at, I've been blown up, all those things. And so there is something in that process, but it also makes me fearless. Like, I easily could have said, "Let's do this via StreamYard, and you sit in your house, I'll sit in my house." But I would rather have this exchange, because there's things that we'll communicate and continue to process long after we're not together. And yeah, it is a motherfucker to have to come up to Hollywood from Orange County. And like, my rule is I don't leave Hollywood after 2:30. I'll find something else to do. Right. So, cause I know what's waiting for me out there. But I don't complain about it because I don't have to do it every day, and I get to choose, and it's enriching for me. If it enriches me, then it's enriching the audience and it's enriching the guest. And so I'm accounted for those things, but I had to learn that through a lot of trial and error and a lot of appreciation for things. And one of the things I try to do in my life in general is see the person, take invisible people and say, "Hey," like I always say, I'm middle-aged and I'm invisible, like, "There was a murder. Was there anybody else there?" "No." And I'm like, "I was standing right next to you," because I don't count. Right. But you look around and you go, "Hey, there's the person." My classic thing is like the person who's facing out when you walk by them, when you leave the airplane the last security checkpoint. I always turn around and go, "Hey, I see you there. I see you taking care of us, keeping us safe, and I appreciate you." When I talk to the booker, or even if I'm talking to Barry Katz and I'm writing my email, I'll say something like, "Hey, no matter what, even if you don't say yes and everything else, just thank you for what you do for all of us. I mean, all of your work, it all matters," especially the PhDs, because they never get thanked for anything. And so I have learned to take some of those things and make them part of who I am, and then give these things to other people. Just seeing someone who's suffered and lost their kid in some kind of horrible war situation, it's not my job to find everything out every single meeting. Sometimes my job is to shut up and listen and just focus on trust. And so I think that I've developed informal and unintentional trust building by having to do this in these very complex environments.
Dr. Phil, I asked him what his greatest advice he ever received from anybody. He said, "My father." He said, "Phil, never miss an important opportunity to shut the fuck up."
That's right.
And one of the things I wanted to share that you were alluding to, why people don't do certain things or what they need to do. At the end of the day, besides what I've said, is most people don't have a sense of urgency. Like, let's say there's an interview you want. Let's say you wanted to interview Magic Johnson.
Right.
Okay. How do you interview Magic Johnson? How do you get him? I just told you there's 100 people waiting. He's saying no to everybody. But I guarantee you, if you visualize the fact that you're not going to see your family again until you get an interview with Magic Johnson,
boy. Yeah.
you're going to get an interview with Magic Johnson. And it's like you talked about before earlier. It's like it's that thing where you have to have that sense of urgency, but people don't. You can always tell, like somebody complaining about, oh, the pandemic, kicked my ass. And, it's like the clubs don't know me and I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, well, why don't you reach out to every single club in the country with your best video and follow up every week? Oh, well, they're not going to talk to me. Oh, well, why don't we find out if they will or not? As a matter of fact, BCC me on every single email you send out to every comedy club in the country. I'd love to see how hard you're working on your career.
Yeah.
Never get emails.
Yeah.
Because people always make excuses for what the story is. My son, who's a music producer, goes by the name Zion Cat with a K. His first album, he's 18, just reached 1 million streams.
Wow.
And I'm so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. Making jokes. We're loaded. He's like, Dad, I'm a music producer. There's a singer and there's a person who sings the songs. I get 1/3 of whatever it is. I said, so what? That's amazing. He says, Dad, I've made $1,000 so far.
Yeah.
I'm like, so what? It's like you attained 1 million people downloaded this and listened to it.
Yeah.
That's an extraordinary accomplishment. You're 18. You exceeded everyone's expectations, including your own.
Yeah.
You told me you hoped that you got 25,000 streams. You got 1 million.
Dang.
But on the other side of the coin, he says, Dad, there's this internship at Sony, and the teacher says that there's a 1 in 100 chance that anyone's going to get it.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to fill out all the paperwork. It doesn't seem like it's worth it. I'm probably not going to get it. I said, really? I said, can I ask you a question? He said, sure, Dad. What is it? I said, let's say I take you and 99 of your friends, all expense paid, and I take you down to the beach and I have it all catered and everything's wonderful. Beautiful day, Zion. And right before everybody's about to go in the water, I share with everybody, listen, you're going to have a great time in the water today, but one of you is going to be killed by a great white shark.
Yeah.
Are you going in? No, Dad, I'm not going in. It's a 1 in 100 shot. I'll get killed by a shark.
Yeah.
Is everybody else going in? No, Dad, no one's going in. So what's different about that and the Sony gig?
Yeah.
Nothing, Dad. I'll apply to the Sony internship.
I'm big on saying, don't borrow no. Yeah, God, Magic Johnson would never say no to me. What's the worst that could happen? You send an email. I bet if you write magic@ladodgers.com, there's probably going to get pretty close to him. And if it isn't that one, you can figure it out. There's a lot of ways to pitch him via email, right? I could bug you. It's like, hey, Barry, you guys must have his number. Let me get that. It's a lot of ways to approach this thing.
And the way I would, if I were putting my manager hat on with you, which is what I do all the time, and is this program I do on the side, this Blueprint for Success program, where we have a community of hundreds of people in the entertainment business, and I do my best to help them get to where they want to go, where they don't have like the representation or whatever. They just want to know how to move forward. And so for you, what I would say is, okay, study Magic Johnson, study all the people in his life that are his greatest friends, that he's whatever. Okay, who of those people does he respect, does he love, that I've interviewed out of my 1,500 interviews?
Right.
What are his interests? Well, his interests are in cooking and medicine. Okay, I've interviewed Shep Gordon. I'll send a letter telling him that I Give you Shep Gordon, who
That's right.
and Magic loves the Dalai Lama, and Shep cooked for the Dalai Lama. Okay, there. Sly Stone. I find out, okay, Sly was one of his favorite groups, and in the 80s used to come to the Forum to watch him. Okay, I'll put him in the letter and whatever, and I'll rely on this, and this, and I'll put things together in a way that it's about the sale.
Yeah.
Again,
I just got to say, every time I pitch a guest, I write a unique email. I might put the same elements in there, but I'm looking for those things, right? And so you don't get a cut and pasted thing with like fill in the blank, Barry Katz. You don't get that. You get, I tell you like, here's who I've had, and I've got all these people. So I do that, and right, and that is how you book people.
My letter had the words ham and egger in it, but even though I'm Jewish, I still came here. I said, I'm looking for a ham and egger, and I hear, Barry, you're the guy for me. So
yeah. The truth is, I've wanted to have you on the show for a long time, but I wasn't sure when or what or why, because I had access to you because of Jay. And I'm like, and you get a sense for these things. Like, I know I can book Barry, but I need to make sure that it's the right time. And when it presents itself, you go for it. And you are working on this blueprint for success. And I thought, oh, well, he's interested in talking about this. It's no longer about me needing him. Now I can help Barry. And that's really why I reached out. Was you have this great thing, you have this system, you're taking all of your experience and you're saying, here's how you apply this to your entertainment career, whether you're a comedian or going to be a manager or whatever it is. Talk a little bit about that. And we have a little bit of time left.
Sure, no problem. A little bit of time for me, just so you know, if you haven't started playing this on double speed yet, you made a big mistake because I talk very slow. So I trained my whole life in the comedy business. I started as a stand-up comedian. I ran 50 comedy clubs all over New England. I was married early on. My wife passed away at 23. Like most of you who have a tragedy that happens with you, you ask yourself why. And then 10 years later, or 5 years later, or 20 years later, you look into the eyes of your children and you say, oh, I get it. Somebody had to leave the earth plane for me to get in my car and drive to New York, away from all the people who kept hugging me and saying everything's going to be okay, that I couldn't take anymore.
Yeah.
So then I went to New York and I found a space to do a comedy club. I opened the Boston Comedy Club, which is where I met and started managing some of the greatest comedians in the world. I started managing Louie CK was my first client, Dave Chappelle, Jay Moore, Tracy Morgan, Jim Brewer, Darrell Hammond. So many unbelievable acts that I was, Bill Burr. And I felt blessed because I was in a place where I didn't know. I took a chance. I went to New York. But again, I had to go to the club and sell them that I could do it. People who did not know me walking in and saying, I'm going to make this the Boston Comedy Club. And they're like, in New York? Yes. And I did it. And I made it successful. And I managed some of the greatest people of my generation or anybody's generation. I was fortunate to have 6 clients who were on Saturday Night Live at different times. I had a guy host twice, Dane Cook, who I represented for 17 years, Jay Moore, 25 years. And along the way, other extraordinary people like Frank Caliendo for 10 years. And I mean, just Louie Anderson and Mike Epps and it's all about the relationships, but it's about the great work. And even if it doesn't last, there's no reason why you can't stay friends with these people and be close with these people. Because, if you do great work, even if it ends, it can end for certain reasons that have nothing to do with the work you did.
Right.
And so then I started producing television and film, and I realized I could go in with the artists and be a producer on things with them and help them be creative. Movies like Half Baked. Neil Brennan was the doorman at my comedy club, and Timothy Olyphant, the actor, was the doorman at my other comedy club. And him and Chappelle got together. We were in the room when we sold Half Baked.
Yeah.
These 2 young kids go into the room to the president of Universal and they sell the movie. Again, it's all about the sale, making people feel safe.
Yeah.
You have to make people feel safe to write a check for you. And that's the way it is. And so I do that, and I get to produce television, and I do Last Comic Standing with Jay Moore and the great Peter Engel, who created Saved by the Bell and morning television. And we go to NBC and we sell it to NBC, the sale. And then we get the show on the air. We get nominated for an Emmy because, as Magic Johnson says, we over deliver. And it's on for 9 years. And I got to do scripted shows. I represented last one, Whitney Cummings. I worked on that show. And so, but what I realized is, as great a manager as I thought I was, and I feel I could be, you only help one person. You know, somebody gets Saturday Night Live, you help that one person get their dream gig. And yes, it helps Lorne and NBC and millions of people watch and laugh. But it's the artist, the one person. I was trying to figure out how I could help more people. And because of Jay Moore having me as the first guest on his podcast, where it was like the #1 show in the world that day, and I was the recipient of like 500,000 to 1 million people. And then he had me on like 10 more times. He said, Barry, you have to do your own podcast.
Yeah.
I said, I can't do that. People are going to hate me. My industry is going to hate nobody. No manager does a podcast. He says, you have to start. And I credit Jay for changing my life, because I did industry standard and I realized I was helping people, but I couldn't help people enough because I didn't have access to them.
Right.
So during the pandemic, I did something really, what people would think is really stupid. I invested money and I got an office space. I built it into a studio, and I created all this content for Blueprint for Success to help artists get to the next level. And then I developed this whole program that if you had no money, $10 a month to $1,000 a month or more, I could help you with anything you wanted, depending on the level you wanted. I could help you if you had a lot of money. I could help you do your own hour special and produce it and get great people. I could help you make a movie that you want and cast the people in it. Or I can just help you listen to 50 podcasts that I took off the free platform, like Kevin Hart and Bill Burr, that you can look and study. And then I do these calls once every week on Mondays. One's a writer's room for people who want to, you know, collaborate.
Yeah.
One's an Ask Me Anything. One is I break down the first set of a great comedian, and the last one is a round table where I have a celebrity guest from the industry. And anyone, you know, they come on, and it's an extraordinary experience. And I can give 4 Monday, like an hour to an hour and a half every Monday, and I can make a difference for people. And it doesn't affect my management, my TV, my film producing, my other businesses. And I can go and I can help people. So, you know, if that's something that I can do, it means a lot to me. And so I just actually I started working with these guys who work with Anthony Robbins, and they, you know, thought that it could be something really, really even more special. And they got involved like 3 weeks ago, and there's been, I think, over 300 new people that have joined, and it's just an amazing thing when you're on these Zoom calls, and they're all over the world, and they have all different things they want. Some want to be managers, some want to be animators, some want to be stand-up comedians, some want to do hour specials as comedians, some just want to work as a comedian across the country, some want to be writers, and I have that wealth, and I can Airbnb my mind of 40 years in the business and help them get to where they want to go.
There's a link in the show notes. There's you can just go to Blueprint for Success. Type in Barry Katz. Like, it's not hard to find it.
Yeah,
and you can even get a discount if you use my name, Pete, in the discount code. And
that is true. We gave Pete the ham and turkey bacon kosher thing. It's blueprint for success.com. And you can use this young man's information, and it's really, I know people get on microphones all the time, and especially after I told you everything's all about the sale. And I want to say something because I know we don't have much time left. You know, there's a lot of people who do Pete's show. They don't have to sell anything anymore. They've done it. They don't have to do it. You're not going to go on Blueprint for Success and it's going to be like, oh, thank God I can pay my mortgage this month. I'm doing it because I want to be in a position where I love to help people accomplish their goals if they can. It's the greatest feeling in the world to know that you make a difference for people. And, you know, they say in Kabbalah that all you have to do is make a difference to one person in your life, and you've done your job. But I'm sure Pete feels the way I do. And if I only was able to make a difference to one person, I'd want to end my life. It's like I want to try to make as much of a difference as I can. And I think this gives me the opportunity to do this the best in the most efficient way possible. And I really want to do that. That's the thing I love, being of service and helping people in this business navigate through all the landmines, pardon the expression, and get to the other side.
Yeah.
And I sit across from you, and that's what you do in your own way.
Yeah.
You take people, you allow them to sit across from you and use their instrument to the best of their ability, and you help them play their instrument. You are a tremendous conductor, and I notice.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly.